Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. My guest today is Per Sjöfors, better known as the Price Whisperer. He's the CEO of Sjöfors Partners, an agency that works with globally recognized brands on ways to gain pricing power through comprehensive analysis and pricing strategy methods. Per developed an interest in understanding how pricing details fit into a company's growth and margins. He discovered that pricing is not a separate activity, and services such as sales channels, marketing, and customer targeting are all interconnected. And if this is not understood correctly, sales and profits will be drained from the marketing automation. So I was talking with Per before the show. I love talking about pricing. I think it's a topic that too many people skim over and they do not give it the proper attention that it deserves. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Per, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Jeff, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited about this too.
So this is going to be a lot of fun. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what makes you so amazing. How did you get into being the Price Whisperer?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I didn't invent that myself. I was called the Price Whisperer so many times that I decided to adopt it. And part of this, obviously, is I got a weird name. So people can't really find me unless they do maybe a Google search for the Price Whisperer, which do find me very easily. But the story here is that I'm natively Swedish. And I ran a couple of companies in Europe, one in Zurich, Switzerland, and one out of London. And then I came here to the US in the mid-90s, and I established a division of a fairly large public company and ran that for a while. And after that, I've had another 4 CEO positions. In all of these instances, we did experiments with pricing. And some of those experiments were very successful, meaning that next quarter revenues are up 25%. Some were real duds. And what I had learned in business school and could read about pricing was so academic that it was completely useless. It didn't help us understand why some of those experiments worked. And so 15 years ago, when I decided I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun, I set up my own shop and decided to develop a process that would make pricing, every pricing experiment a success. And that process, in short, consists of measuring willingness to pay in a marketplace, which you do online, and then segment that willingness to pay along lines of different customer segments, different marketing channels, different marketing messages, different sales channels, sales methodologies, and so forth. And that creates a holistic view on how to price correct, how to price right, that always drives higher revenues and higher sales volume and higher profits.
You know what was really interesting for me, especially when I was getting my MBA, is that we talked a little bit about pricing, about especially in supply chain and other value-based businesses that were that were being discussed. One of the more basic examples was, for example, the price of your popcorn when you go to the movies. Like, why is it so damn expensive, to get your popcorn? And there actually have been a massive amount of studies done on this, on what exactly is the optimum price for what people are willing to pay and how much you can upcharge them based on just giving them a little bit more volume, things like that. But then I put on my digital marketing hat, and our business is really focused on creating a ridiculous amount of value and then selling your product or your service so that you are delivering on that value, right? So you get what you get in the end are a bunch of value stacks saying, like, I'm going to give you this lead magnet and it's worth $1,000. This other thing, it's worth $5,000, and my time is worth $50,000. And you're getting it all today for the low price of $99, right? And what happens is, you're being sold to, that you, the consumer, needs to make needs to make a decision. Is it worth it for me to whip out my credit card and make this purchase? Because it is the value that I'm going to pay less than the value that I'm going to receive in return. And that
Mhm.
is extremely tricky, right?
Yeah, well, this is the process that I developed that answers all those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you mentioned that pricing is an art, but it's really not. It's about process and science, and it needs to be based on, like I said, willingness to pay, and specifically what you're willing to pay for. But then it's also important to know that, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the popcorn because obviously it's something we all know that the ingredients, the costs are dirt cheap, right? Um, Yet you can charge an arm and a leg for it in the theater, and that's because A, you have a captive audience. Um, B, that it's something that goes with movies, and there's a whole slew of different reasons, um, and this is what so many companies forget, that it's the same in whatever their business is. Well, not in the movie theater popcorn business. They may be in some other business, and but the same applies, right? It applies to focus on the customer category that will have a higher willingness to pay, right? What's the point doing marketing um, uh, to folks who, I mean, again, going back um, to the popcorn, what's the point in doing marketing to folks who doesn't like popcorn, right? And I'm sure there's those out there. I'm not one of them, but I'm sure they're out there.
Let's focus in on something a little bit more tangible. Like when the traditional, or at least when most people try to simplify pricing model, they're just like, well, my cost of goods is
Yeah.
this. I want to sell it for X markup, and that markup needs to cover my hard costs, my overhead, and I want to make X percentage of profit, right?
Mhm.
Some of the other considerations that go in that sort of just blow up that simplistic formula, but will also help you arrive at what the true value is, or what the true price is for what you should be offering your
Well,
product?
yeah, I mean, first of all, cost is important because obviously you need to price above your cost. Or rather, if you decide not to price above your cost, it's going to be for a particular reason. Um, and But the problem is that the cost have nothing to do with the value that you deliver, whether that is a service or a product. It doesn't matter. It adds some kind of level of value. And it is willingness to pay measure. It means that you can measure how much people are willing to pay for the value you deliver, and then when you price accordingly, your sales volume will increase, your revenues will increase, your shareholder value and profitability will increase, all at the same time, right? And understanding that willingness to pay is really crucial. Um, and But then there are other things. It's For example, you can influence how much folks are willing to pay for your product or service, just how you present the price, right? And Just to give the audience here a little tip, the way we work as humans is that we cannot not compare numbers, right? And if you think about how many websites set up prices, they often, companies have good, better, best, right? And they start with a low price, and then as you read left to right, prices goes up. Now that is wrong, okay? Because what you want to do is you want to start with a high price, and this is something called price anchoring, because um, as you read left to right and from top to bottom, what's going to be the first number they see, the first price they see, should be a high number, because that makes what they see after that appear more affordable. So that will lead to higher sales volume, right? And as opposed to you do it the traditional way, where you have an anchor which is lower than the rest of the prices, right? That leads to a lower willingness to pay and a lower sales volume, right?
So does that work when you're creating a value stack where you're telling people, like, where you're listing off everything that you're going to get and you put a big number next to it, but then below it you're saying, like, oh, now you're going to get all of this that has this $20,000 value for $1,000, right? Is that basically what you're talking about, or is there a little bit
No,
more
I'm
crafting
I'm
that
I'm
goes
talk,
involved?
no, I'm talking about, let's say you're selling your digital service, and you have a you have a small package for $4,000 a month. You have a mid package at 6,000, and you have a giant packet at 10,000. You want to start with the 10,000, so they see the 10,000 first, and then they see the 6,000, and then they see the 4,000. That's going to increase sales of both the 4 and the 6,000. And then what you really want to do is that you want to have a mega large package for 30,000, you know, and you want to, prepay for 5 years or whatever it may be, and nobody's going to buy it, but it just sits there to be an anchor point. And I'll tell you this, one of the most successful anchor points I've seen was a few years back when Apple introduced the watch, right? The normal Apple Watch at that time was $349, but they had exactly the same electronics in a case that was in gold, and it was 17,000. And all the journalists who wrote about this, they said, and Apple have the audacity to sell the same electronics for $17,000. But it wasn't there to be sold. It was just there to be an anchor point, right?
Amazing, because you know what happened was, they did sell a few of them,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Maybe not a lot, but some people needed that status symbol to put on their wrist. But at the
Correct.
same time, you're right that when you think that I can get this limited edition one for 17,000, but us commoners can buy it for 349. You're right. It does create this. Okay, well, I'm still getting a status symbol. It still has the Apple logo on it. I'm just not getting the one that's gold plated. Right.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's a genius stroke, because what happens is, you really create this air of exclusivity around your product. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where do you see other companies going wrong with their pricing strategies? Like, I would imagine if you're driving down the freeway and you see a billboard that has a price up there, and then it just makes you go, my God, what are these
Yeah,
guys
well,
thinking?
there's something called price walls. And price walls are psychological price points where small price changes generate significant change in volume should you cross them. And those price walls they're typically on sort of, call them even numbers, 10, 25, 50, 100, 500, and so forth, And um, and when you do cost plus pricing, which is one of the top 3 pricing mistakes, you may end up having the price of this table at $1,000, $1,003, and it could be that if you rather sell it at $995, you double your sales volume, right? But because you just slam on your rule of thumb margin, and that rule of thumb margin is different in different industries, you just end up with that price,
One of the things
or
I found,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask, one of the things I found, especially when traveling to Europe, is that they, like here in the US, you do see a lot of, $3.99, $4.99,
Yeah.
even gas prices have a little nine
Yeah.
tenths after them. You don't see
Mhm.
that so much in Europe. And I was just curious, why is that? I mean, you have a currency that is almost, it's almost on parity. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think those tricks work here and they don't work in other places?
No, they work, and in general terms, Europeans are actually better on pricing than we are here in the U.S. And that is because you have much smaller home markets, eh? And slower growth in general. So folks have to be more cautious, or more not cautious. They have to spend more time making sure that they turn over all stones possible to keep prices. And and there's a price sends a message of quality. And if you're too cheap, people won't buy it. And in fact, it's been proven that your fear of making a wrong decision because of low price is 2.25% stronger than your expected benefit of the same purchase, right? So if you price yourself too low, people won't buy it. And we've all been there. We hold something in our hand and we say, I kind of want to buy it, but it's so cheap, I won't, right? And that also means that the 99, and by the way, 97 is more effective than 99. Um, um, 98 and 96 should not be used. But it denigrates the value. You should only do 95, 97, 99 if what you're selling is a commodity. If in fact you want to increase the perception of value in a product, it should not end on a 9, you know? And Europeans are better understanding that, to use price as a way of messaging value, increased value.
Interesting. Can you please walk us through a scenario where you helped a company that did not have a good pricing strategy, and then after you came in, you were able to affect a big change in their bottom line? And what kind of changes did you make in order to make that happen?
Um, well, if you really want to do this properly, you want to make sure that you have pricing as a centerpiece in your business strategy. And what I mean with that is that within the organization, any company's profit comes from only three variables: the total cost, the total sales volume, and the price of whatever you sell. And of these three, price has the highest leverage. It impacts profits the most. Um, and if the organization, and certainly from a managerial and executive point of view, if all knows how even small price changes change the profitability in the company, um, everything's going to change, and you're going to take your company to the next level. And uh, I just have a book out called The Price Whisper, with a subtitle, A Holistic View on Pricing Power. And a quote from a prior customer that I got in preparation for this book said that the teachings I did helped them to grow from about 100 million to way over a billion. Not overnight, of course, but uh, over about a 5-year period.
You know,
By putting,
just by making small and incremental changes towards the pricing,
yeah,
independent of other factors of like cost of goods going up and down and marketing costs fluctuating.
by making by having the entire organization, or at least the entire organization that can affect pricing and discounting, aware of how the highest. I mean, if you do a thought experiment for the average company, a 1% increase in price equals 11.3% increase in profitability, right? And the same goes, of 1% less discounting have the same effect. Whereas a 1% increase in sales increase profitability 3.5%, and a 1% decrease in cost increase profitability 5.5%. So pricing has the highest leverage, and if the entire organization are aware of these changes, many small decisions will be different. I mean, sales compensation may change. Um, what salespeople are allowed to discount may change. product management is going to say, okay, but why don't we add another 3% price here because we have this feature, right? Or because we have this bundle or package that is convenient, we can actually charge 25% more, right? Bundles shouldn't necessarily be cheaper. And if you, I've actually done the calculations of, you have these gift baskets for Christmas. I've looked at it and said, what is the how much more do I pay? And I pay about a third more because it's convenience, right?
Exactly.
It's a bundle that's a convenience.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Per. Can you please let everyone know how they can find you online and how they can reach out to you directly if they want to learn
I
more?
I mean, the best way of finding me is simply do a Google search for the Price Whisper, and I'm going to show up. I have a YouTube channel, and I publish a lot. I'm part of the Forbes Business Council and also something called the C-Suite. And the best way of finding me is just Google the Price Whisper, and you're going to get lots of hits.
Amazing. Per, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been an intensely amazing discussion, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff.